Welcome back to the Spectre Creative Channel, where we do deep dives into toy lines and toy culture. This is your host, Scott ToyGuru Neitlich. And if you've been following this channel, or even if you're new to it, you may be familiar, or not familiar with this guy. This is the character Hero that was designed to be the 1987 extension of the Masters of the Universe line from the 1980s. You can see more about that in the video linked above. While the figure never made it out for a variety of reasons, and again, go check out the video explaining all that, we did eventually make him in the Masters of the Universe Classics line, which was a line that started in 2008 that was aimed at the adult collector. Hero became the Comic-Con figure summer of 2009 to sort of celebrate a figure that never got made in the vintage line, but collectors loved. But what about that other guy named Hero, the guy in the middle there? What is up with him? Why does he share a name with the Preternia Hero from the 87 line? I mean, what's with the vest and the ponytail and the new adventures, gauntlets and boots and or pants and belt? Not gauntlets, but yeah, the belt. Well, this is Hero 2. Very similar to how DC Comics has multiple characters with the same name. There's multiple Green Lanterns, there's multiple Flashes, there's multiple Supergirls, and usually these are just designated as, say, Flash 1, Flash 2, and Flash 3. And it's very similar in Masters of the Universe with multiple characters named Hero. So let me explain what the difference is between these two characters, how they relate to each other, and where the second one came from. The first one, obviously, was in the Mattel catalog in 1987, so we all know where that one came from. But the second one, the one that is known as Hero, the son of He-Man, that's a little different and a little less well known by, I guess you could say, the more casual toy fan, since this never made it past some 80s concepts. But in classics, no toy ever gets left behind, or at least no idea for a toy gets left behind, because the whole point of Masters of the Universe Classics was to basically do as many action figures as possible. And this meant both doing figures based on the vintage line and even characters based on concepts that never made it out. Essentially, everything mattered. Everything counted with classics. And we really had a big goal to find ways to incorporate everything into both the toy line and the storyline that was told through the bios and the included mini-comics. And, well, why did we do this? Well, yeah, to make money for Mattel. I mean, come on. The idea of any toy line is to make money because you've got shareholders and management to appease, and there's nothing hidden about that. All toy companies are like this. And a big thing we did in the Classics line was sort of resurrect some ideas that were proposed in the 80s, like King He-Man, and never really made it farther than the drawing board. But unlike some toys in the 80s that were proposed and never quite made it out, and thank you to Action Figure Insider again for posting these online. They're a great website. The He-Man or Hero, son of He-Man concept never even made it to a proposal for toys. It was just a proposal for a story concept, specifically a TV show. In fact, 2 different TV shows were proposed that were called Hero, Son of He-Man. And part of this is because the name Hero never made it, past the Mattel catalog, so the name was around. So what is up with the 2 completely different concepts for Hero, son of He-Man, and how do they relate to Hero, the Preternia character? Well, it's about time that story was told. So let's explore this lost piece of 1980s story concept and how it came to be. All right. So for starters, the first, or the more well-known Hero, Son of He-Man came from a series summary which is posted online. Despite the fact that they spell Grayskull incorrectly throughout the entire story Bible, which is one of my pet peeves when people misspell Castle Grayskull, the storyline definitely had some really interesting concepts. Hero starts off as Dare, which is kind of a counterpart of Prince Adam. So Dare is the adopted son of He-Man and Teela when He-Man grows up and becomes a king. And essentially after He-Man defeats Skeletor and retires to become king of Eternia, they find this wayward orphan and adopt him, and he grows up to be Dare. Well, they name him Dare, and he's kind of like a little bit more even barbarian-esque, closer to the original concept of He-Man. And he has Battlebird, which is his sidekick there, much like He-Man, Prince Adam had Cringer. Again, you can read the Bible's not too hard to find online. I'll have a link in it in the description. And when he picks up the Power Sword and calls upon the power of Grayskull, he's transformed from Dare into Hero. So Hero would have been the next generation character, with He-Man's son now taking on the main role. And of course, Skeletor was back, and he had a whole group of new baddies to come with him, which are spelled out in the Bible. They actually all get named and described. Some of them are kind of, again, 2.0 characters, much like Flash 1 and Flash 2. And we were actually able to incorporate them into the Classics mini-comics with the idea that maybe eventually we would get to them. So you can see Trapjaw 2, Merman 2, Old Beastman, Mistletoe, all these characters that were originally intended to be Skeletor's new evil warriors were kept alive in Classics this way. The same thing happened with the Masters. So in this story Bible, there's a whole new group of heroic warriors: Forklift, Airbag, Kayla, Manny Faces 2, again, like Flash 1 and Flash 2, Ram Man 2. So, some of them being characters that continue the legacy of a previous character. Some of them are offsprings of previous characters. And again, much like the new evil warriors for Skeletor, we were able to incorporate the all-new, all-different Masters of the Universe into the Classics mini-comics, again with the intention that by including them, it opened up the door to potentially doing figures of them. Again, the whole point was to do as many figures as possible. All right, so that was the first Hero Son of He-Man concept. What about the second one? Well, this one is a little bit more of a tragedy, because while it definitely existed, and I read it and I shared it with some of the super fans at Comic-Con, it's not exactly around anymore. And before people start, yelling foul and stuff like that, it didn't get, evaporated by Thanos or anything. It all goes back to when I left Mattel. So when I left, I made sure all of the MOTUC work needed to run the line was in a neat pile. And I got a call a few weeks later from the new team working on it, asking me where this was, where I left all my material. And, I explained that it was all in one very neat pile, left on my desk, with a note saying, everything you need for MOTUC Classics in this pile. I thought it was, pretty clear, and it would be hard to miss. And then included the only copy of the second Hero Son of He-Man Bible. Well, I found out that when HR cleared out my work area, they kind of tossed this pile of paperwork. They didn't realize what it was. And it included the only copy of this Bible. The Bible does exist. Part of proof of that is there's a write-up about when I brought it to Comic-Con and shared it at the Power Party. I'll have a link to this in the description below. But more or less, this was an early draft of what became the new adventures of He-Man. So while the first Hero Son of He-Man was much more about He-Man's son and the new evil warriors and the new masters, this Bible was a early version that really just morphed into new adventures. So characters like Icarius or Flipshot are the fellow heroes in this, as opposed to those new masters, if you will. It also introduced a new villain that was going to be called Skeleteen. Boy, does that sound 80s or what? I mean, come on, the mohawk and the spikes. Yeah, this guy was definitely an 80s reject. So there is an image of him from the Bible, of him on the motorcycle there, that I showed at San Diego Comic-Con one year, which was the same year that I think I brought the Bible with me to share. So you can see one of the images from it. And then we had Axel redraw Skeleteen as he might look in the Classics line based on the artwork that was in the story Bible, which, again, alas, from my knowledge, was tossed out after I left Mattel. Now, Skeleteen, just as a quick FYI, he doesn't have a skull face the way Skeletor does. He wears a mask, so you can see him holding the mask in his hand in this shot from the mini-comics. We used him pretty extensively in the mini-comics as a new villain as we continued to push the brand forward as a way of introducing the next generation of characters and the next generation of villains. So there's Skeleteen without his skull mask there, the son of Skeletor and Evelyn. All right, so back to the Bible. As I noted, it was basically very close to the same story that just became New Adventures. All of the characters were there, Carius, all of the villains were there. It was the same villains, Slushhead and Optic, that just got used in New Adventures. And Hero, son of He-Man, looked like this. He had the exact same design that eventually became New Adventures He-Man, which is why the Dare Hero 2 figure and the New Adventures He-Man figure are wearing the same armor, because the original design for Dare was just the New Adventures armor. Eventually, it just got turned into He-Man, and they dropped the son of. In fact, you can even see the early prototype of Skeletor from New Adventures had the long ponytail, much like Skeleteen. So, Skeleteen just kind of morphed back into Skeletor. So as I noted earlier in the video, part of Classics was really about the idea that everything matters, everything counts. So we wanted to really pay homage to both of these story Bibles, both of the different Hero, Son of He-Man storylines that were developed but never made it to market. And a part of that was getting to release Hero 2, or Dare, in the Classics line at the very tail end. In fact, he was the last figure kind of released under my watch before I left Mattel. And we incorporated him very heavily into the final mini-comics, again, as we pushed the brand forward, the idea of telling the story of the next generation. So you had He-Man returning from New Adventures and meeting his son Dare, who was heir to the power of He-Man. This was his and Teela's son that they had before he had to leave for New Adventures, because he had to basically defeat the Horde Empire. And he came back to find he had a 15-year-old son. And his son would inherit the power sword. And, again, by the power of He-Man, which came from the story Bible. He didn't say by the power of Grayskull. He said by the power of He-Man in the first Bible. He would become Hero. And this was all, kind of summarized in his bio on the back of the package. Again, he was merging elements from both of the Hero, Son of He-Man Bibles and turning it into one character. But there was obviously the other Hero, the original one, the one in the gold armor with the red cape. And the idea was that these were completely separate characters, but to explain why they both had the same name, we sent Dare, son of He-Man, back in time to Preternia, where he meets Hero. Hero actually saves his life, and then recruits him, and winds up being kind of his mentor. Well, not kind of. He winds up being his mentor. So, after he swoops in and saves Dare/Hero 2's life, they team up, and Hero 1, the one in the gold armor, becomes his mentor, training him to fight and to use magic. And at this point in the story, once he's being trained by Hero 1, Hero 2 starts wearing the armor that's from the more barbarian version of the armor that is from the first Bible. The silver armor, his first look, was from the second Bible, the one that became New Adventures. So he basically switches armor, again, to pay homage to both story Bibles. So you can see, going back to the first Hero, Son of He-Man, he wore the harness armor when he became Hero. So we wanted to incorporate this into the character as well, so that both armors would get used. So this is kind of his second look and the one that he would continue wearing. You can see that very clearly on the final mini-comic cover, where he's battling the unnamed one, wearing the harness armor, brandishing the power sword, in a fight to the finish against the ultimate evil. One of the problems, though, was the final mini-comic was produced after I left Mattel, and to say there were issues with it is an understatement. Axel and I still kind of have a rough time looking at this issue together, because one of the things was there was no consistency. He would swap back and forth which armor he was wearing. One panel he'd have the harness, the next panel he would have the space armor. And both of us were like, oh my god, like seriously? Like, did they even reuse the cover from the previous issue as a panel to show both heroes teaming up in Preternia. He's supposed to be wearing the harness at this point. Once he starts training with Hero, he has the harness on. But unfortunately, after I left, there really wasn't as tight of an eye on both the toy line or the comics or the bios or pretty much anything. By the end of the final issue, he's back in his harness again for reasons, riding on Battlebird in the third Ultimate Battleground, leading the armies of Eternia. So, I mean, he's supposed to be in that. And the final shot, at least, was mostly correct, where he's in his harness battling Skeleteen with the projection energy Castle Grayskull and the new heroes and villains surrounding him. To say I kind of now understand what Michael Moore feels like when he watches the Watchmen movie, I kind of get that now, because reading the final issue of the mini-comic is kind of like cringing for me because of all the mistakes that were made. But of all the mistakes in the mini-comic, the one that actually kind of really got me the most, I guess is the pack out. He was packed out incorrectly in the package. And unfortunately, when a figure is packed out, this tends to be their default look in pop culture. He was supposed to be packed out like this. You notice that the action figure has blue pants. Well, when he has blue pants in the comic, he's in his first armor, which is the silver armor, the one that eventually became the New Adventures armor. So, with the blue pants, he doesn't wear the harness. The harness he wears when he has furry shorts later on when he's being trained by Hero 1 in Preternia. But this is how he got packed out. The harness is not supposed to be worn by Hero at the time when he also has the blue pants on. And when the figure was packed out sort of incorrectly with this harness with the blue pants, I was like, look at you've got the comic right there as reference. He doesn't wear this harness until he has the fuzzy shorts, and yes, there's a cod piece, and I'll get into that in a minute, why the cod piece wasn't included. But this was not, it was like a mix and match. What I was going to do if I'd stayed at Mattel is I would have done a video explaining that to do the second look, you were supposed to take a Vicron figure from San Diego Comic-Con, because you'll notice the gauntlets are the same. We use the gauntlets from Vicron, and this was all very deliberate. So using the Vicron body, you'd pop off the head, pop on Hero 2's head there, and then use the harness armor. This is the correct look for the harness version. And the cod piece would have been included actually in a future figure. We had plans for that, so you could have then strapped on the cod piece, and this would have been the correct look for the blue harness. Vicron's body, the armor that came with Hero 2, the head that came with Hero 2, and then the cod piece was planned to be released with a future figure so you could complete the look. Putting him with this harness in the blue pants, this was just kind of one of those things that went haywire after I left Mattel, basically because there wasn't somebody kind of dedicated to checking off all these details. And it kind of drove me crazy that they packed him out with the harness with the blue pants, because, what can I say, toy OCD, and, it's like having, a character have two different looks, like, merged together in package, and, it's right there, you can see, when he wears the blue pants, he's supposed to have the silver armor, it's on the cover of the comic, for goodness sake. Well, either way, it got him out, and, it explained why we had multiple hero characters, and it was a great way to introduce all of these new characters, the new Masters of the Universe, the new Evil Warriors, that we then used in the mini-comics, again with the idea of setting that up for more toys. Because by this time in the line, we were running out of characters. So the idea was using the mini-comics to introduce as many concepts as possible so that we could set the brand up to have a ton of more toys, of more characters to make into toys in the future, now that we basically finished the vintage line. I mean, yes, I know there's like hundreds of characters from Filmation, but most of them are, very fleeting. The idea was, by putting these characters in the mini-comics, we hope to create fan demand, and as I mentioned in a few other videos, kind of leave the brand in better shape than we found it, meaning there were now more characters that could potentially be toys, and the brand could keep going on and on for years and years to come. At least, that was the hope. And, of course, then there's the whole thing about the unnamed one and that, but that is a video for another time. Now that you know who Hero and Hero 2 are, we'll hit this one in a future video. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Please leave comments below. I do answer all of them. And subscribe and like, because it tells YouTube to share this with other people. And that's what we like doing, sharing toy love. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.